basically you were a matchmaker.
Yeah, matchmaker
A full-service firm, right? A full-service firm.
Not just car insurance, guys.
That's right. I have thought about it quite a bit, and I've distilled it to 3 things. A great manager makes great decisions. A great manager is great with people. And the third thing is that a great manager is creative and innovative and/or creates an environment of creativity and innovation. You do those 3 things really, really well, you can be a great manager.
Speak with some founders who say that their dog is their number 1 co-founder.
There you go.
So this is our second try in doing the intro to the podcast because we messed up the first one. It wasn't my fault. The aircon was on because this one right next to me was sweating.
I was a bit warm.
And our co-producer noticed that the aircon was on. It was disrupting the audio. So now we're starting all over. But before that, I had bit my tongue, and Jenny had completely got off the rail
with animal talk. Yeah.
So we're starting all over. I'm Emmanuel, one of your co-hosts, and this is
Jenny.
All right, and Jenny, who do we have? Which entrepreneur do we have here today for us?
Yes, we have Henry Engelhardt, and he is an entrepreneur that I personally look up to. He's really known for his good management techniques, and he just knows how to be a really good boss. He founded Admiral Group, which is, Wales's only FTSE 100 company, a car insurer, and it has over 10,000 people. And he just really knows how to build a business with, really good team. And if you ask him what has led to Admiral's financial success, I want to say it's worth, well over $8 billion now. And he'll say it's all the team, and it's not just him. And I think that is a piece of advice that a lot of entrepreneurs should take when they're starting up a business, because you have to hire people that are smarter than you.
Yeah, I think, like you just said, he's a great manager. Mm-hmm. He's such a pro at management that he wrote a book about, being a better boss. Mm-hmm. And
it's called Be a Better Boss.
The book is called Be a Better Boss by Henry Engelhardt. And I think it's just great to see that kind of perspective, because a lot of people talk about, the vision and how inspiring they were, and they had a brilliant idea and they just worked really hard. But for him, from my understanding and from the other things I've read about him and I've seen online or from his book, that he just talks about how building a great team around him of people who can work really hard and have different, skills and talent, and it's just about the team. So that's a very different take, yet one that's very needed.
Important.
It's very important to understand that you by yourself cannot build an empire. And
10,000 people is a lot of people.
And Henry's built an empire.
Yeah, how do you go from 5 to 10 to 10 to 10,000 people? To manage that many. And he's met with every single new starter for, I think, 25, 30 years. So he knows what he's doing, and he's going to give us some tips and tricks and advice.
Yeah, without further ado, we should invite him in. Henry, you want to come join us?
Honestly, Henry, I feel like we know so much about you already, and I'm sure a lot of people do know a lot of it about you. But I think we're just going to go back to the beginning, and I know you're from Chicago. I'm from Wisconsin. Emmanuel's from Houston. So usually...
Right, okay. A U.S. mafia here.
Usually it's 2 Americans interviewing British businessmen, and now it's...
That's all. 2 Americans interviewing.
Can I ask you where in Wisconsin you're from?
Yeah, I'm up by Lake Superior.
Oh, yeah,
so very north. Yeah, middle of nowhere.
Deer County?
It's near Deer County, it's called
beautiful
Price County.
Part of the world.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, but it's very remote.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, there's not much to do, but the Great Lakes are gorgeous. So,
yes.
Yeah.
How long have you been here?
2 years. Yeah, so...
Right.
Quite new, I guess, still, but...
Me about 3 years now.
3 years, that's it?
Closing
Okay.
on 3 years, so we're very new in the land of the UK.
Right.
Well, you've been here for a longer time than us.
Not too far from 40. Yeah, we're getting on to our late 30s, and it's 2 countries separated by a common language.
Yeah.
My accent, as you might be able to pick up, is still American.
Yes.
Even though I've been here decades. But when I go home and I say, put the brolly in the boot with the nappies, they look at me and think, what language are they talking? They don't have a clue where you're from.
So you're still living in Wales?
Oh, yeah.
And how is that like?
It's wet.
Yeah. Like the rest of the UK.
Green for a reason, my friend. Yes, that's what we tell people. It's very green.
So how often do you get sunlight? Like today, it's been beautiful last 2 weeks. So I'm wondering if it's been the same over there.
we basically empty the clouds for you in London. We empty them in Wales and pass them on to the east.
So we get the better end of the stick.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Oh,
Definitely, you definitely do.
Thank you for your service.
Yes.
Fair enough. What is it that originally brought you here from Chicago then?
Well, my wife is French, and this is our compromise. We speak English, we get American football on Sunday nights, and we're a hop, skip, and a jump from Paris.
Yeah.
And we came here, and here we are almost 40 years later.
So you guys decided to meet, halfway then.
Yeah, well, we're closer to France,
And Chicago.
but we get American football on Sunday nights,
Oh,
yeah.
that's
so...
fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough.
That was, and the language, her English is better than my English, much less yet my French. So, that transition was easier to come here. She'd lived in the U.S. and I'd lived in France, and it was a bit of a imbalance in either way. And when you come to a place that's neutral, it's a little bit easier because they'd announce on the radio or something, some comedian had died, and we both look at each other and who's that? Rather than one of us going, oh no, and the other going, who's that?
Yeah.
So it worked. Here we are.
Cool.
Still
okay.
here.
Well, I don't even think we introduced Admiral in general, but you're well known for building Admiral to what it is today. You were the former CEO, the former founder. Tell us a little bit about how that started with Lloyd's of London and how you were approached and kind of what led up to that journey
So I got an MBA from INSEAD and got one job offer out of INSEAD, and that was with an American consulting firm, their UK office. And just to put it in perspective, it wasn't a great office. It was in Croydon. It wasn't even in London. It was in Croydon. And I did that for a few months and just really
made a lot of
like
people from Croydon angry by saying that Croydon is not in London.
Well, somebody told me when I went there, they said Croydon wins the all ugly architecture contest. Now, I haven't been back to Croydon in a long time.
I'm sorry to our Croydon fans.
Yes, nothing against
subscribe.
Croydon. But I didn't like being a management consultant, and I saw an ad in a marketing magazine, and I'd done marketing in a previous life, for a startup, hadn't started yet, didn't have a name, just said financial services. Put it down. Next week, I'm looking through a different marketing magazine, and I'm reading an ad for, I read that ad. If it stopped me twice, I should apply. So I applied, and I got the job, and I was the first marketing and sales manager for what became Churchill Insurance. And one of the first things I did was help name Churchill as the marketing director. And we moved to Bromley, which was a totally different experience. No, not really. It's just a little bit further over from Croydon. And I did that for a couple of years, and ups and downs, goods and bads, got a lot of stories to tell. And somebody called me one day saying somebody else looking to start one up, looking for a managing director, would I be interested? And I said, yep, that would be me. And for their sins, they hired me. And it was a managing agency at Lloyd's of London. And that's what was the catalyst to creating what's become Admiral Group PLC.
And I'm aware that you studied journalism at University of Michigan first, right, before your MBA.
Hope you're all right with Michigan.
Yeah, I'm all right with Michigan. Except they own that weird little piece of land above Wisconsin. I still never understood why they have that, and it's not us because it's connected to us, not them. So that aside, I don't know Michigan.
Sorry.
He's apologizing on the behalf of the entire Michigan.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll forgive them. But so, you went into journalism assuming you wanted to be a journalist or something of the sort, and then you ended up building a massive insurance company. Did you ever expect to be an entrepreneur? What was that initial, yes, I can start this company and build it?
I had a lot of jobs. I started working when I was 13, and almost all of my jobs were for entrepreneurs.
At Poochie's Hot Dogs.
Yes.
Poochie's.
She's been dying to ask you about that, actually.
I read it in
One
your
of my
bio.
best experiences. Because there was a Burger King 150 meters up it was a strip mall, up the mall, and big Burger King. And this guy came in, and the place, very, very small little shop. And he basically got his beef from a butcher shop. We blanched our own fries, and we could do another podcast on blanched fries because it's really, really important to great fries. Okay? And
you would know that in Chicago, definitely.
It's big time, yeah. So he went up market, and he killed it. They were lining up out the door for hours at a time, Saturdays, evenings, all this. People felt good about spending that little extra, but getting that really good quality. And that was a really interesting learning experience. And later on, I went to work for a wholesale and retail golf shop. And again, learned a lot. The guy was a buyer. It was incredible. A manufacturer would come to her and say, we got 100 golf bags that we're trying to get rid of. we'll give them to you for $5 a piece. He'd say, fine, I'll take them. He stuck most of them in the warehouse, brought them out. Maybe over a period of 2 or 3 years, he sold them for $65. An incredible margin. And you learn from these things. And then I worked for my father a couple of summers, and he had his own business. Many lessons there. It was in the wholesale meats industry, and very difficult industry, perishable product. Weather conditions in Chicago were pretty terrible. Winters, everything would get stuck up in snow. Summers, the beef would sweat and lose weight, and you're selling it by the pound. And so it was very, very challenging environment. He could buy and sell like crazy. I mean, he was incredible. But he managed the firm by screaming, and I learned by working for him. Nobody ever did anything right in that place, and he had to make all the decisions. And it was a small business, and a successful small business. But, you realized he couldn't grow it because he could only grow it to the point where he could make all the decisions. And that was it was a lesson. I mean, I didn't sit there and analyze this when I was 18 years old and working for him. But later on, you start to understand when you're building a business that, hey, you need to keep moving back and letting other people get in and make some of those decisions. And other things. But I wanted to be a journalist. And I also did radio, TV, and film, and was good at that. That was great. And then after I graduated, I immediately went to France. Yes, there was a woman involved. She's now the wife.
Okay.
The good wife.
There we
and
go.
we've been married for coming up on 42 years now.
Congratulations.
Yep. You congratulate me and give her good luck. Yes. And my first job out of university was at McDonald's on the Champs-Élysées, because I could get the special sauce on the buns really fast, because that was another. And again, it was another learning lesson. This time you're in the machine. How does it work? Everything was timed. Everything was perfectly organized and synchronized and so forth. It was really interesting. I did that for a few months and traveled quite a bit and came back. And unemployment was sky high. And, nobody was hiring. I couldn't get a journalism job. Watergate and Woodward and Bernstein ruined it for everybody, because everybody wanted to be a journalist. So it was very difficult. So I took a job as a runner on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which was trading futures contracts. Basically, I had an orange jacket. And one of the phone guys would hold up an order. I would grab the order. I would walk real fast to the trading pit, hand it to somebody else, wait. They'd go in. The trader would fill the order. They'd hand it, scribble something on it, hand it back. I would take it, and I would walk really fast back to the phone guy and give him the order. That's what my college education was producing. I was a runner, but it was interesting. And then I got to be the phone person, and then I moved into, they were just starting a new business, again, very entrepreneurial, on discount trading, which was all the rage in those days because everything had just been deregulated, stocks and commodities and futures. And so it was a really interesting time, and I got to learn how this whole thing started, and I started to do the marketing and the sales and then manage marketing and sales, and boom, 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 worked my way up, and the firm was growing like Topsy. And so I ended up there for 6 years, opened up an office in France, lived for a year in France, and opened up a European office for them as well. But when I came back from Europe, other people had kind of taken my job. It was a very uncomfortable year, and I kind of walked away. And my wife and I put on our backpacks, and we went off to Asia and Australasia for 6 months. And it was amazing. What you really learn when you travel like that is tolerance. People are different. They face the same situations, the same problems, the same questions, and they look at things totally differently. And you learn yours is not the only way of seeing the world. And you need to get out and see how other people see the world to really be able to appreciate that. And it was an incredibly valuable time. Came back and thought, well, an MBA would help me. I could move industry. I didn't have to stay in the futures industry if I was able to get a management and business administration degree. And I'd heard about this school near Paris called INSEAD. And the beauty of INSEAD is that it's a one-year program, top-notch degree, up there with all the Harvard, Stanford, LBS, all those. And it was only 1 year. And it's near Paris. Wife was happy. We were expecting our first child. He ended up being born while I was taking exams in the back end of February. And so that threw me off. I think that derailed me from the dean's list. I'm sure I would have made it without that. Maybe not. And then afterwards, I got the job for the consulting firm and moved to the UK. And when I called about the job offer at Churchill, I asked the lady, I said, well, what financial service is it exactly? Because I thought maybe this is futures trading again, something like that. And the lady sounded like she wanted to crawl under the table and hide. She said, well, it's car insurance. And I literally, I was at a conference, and I took the phone away from my ear. There were no mobile phones then. Took the phone away from my ear, and I looked at it and went, oh no, how dreadful. What could be more boring than car insurance? But I really didn't like being a management consultant. So I went for it and got the job. And I, like I said, helped name Churchill. And I learned car insurance is fantastic. How many products do you know that are priced differently by who buys them? Yeah, if you think about it.
That's true. I forget that that's kind of how car insurance is priced, isn't it? Like if you have a ticket or something, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, everything. I mean, there's so much information now that goes into calculating your rate, trying to predict, basically, your propensity not only for having an accident, but maybe even the size of that accident. And it's a fascinating business. And we were dealing direct with consumers, and we were tipping the market on its ear, because it was when I got to the UK, the high streets were chock full of insurance brokers. You guys are both too young, and you weren't here. But the insurance brokers were like coffee shops. They were everywhere on the high streets. And now they're gone, because we were a phone-based. We were one of the really first phone-based insurers in the UK. Admiral ended up being the 7th phone-based insurer into the UK. And consumers flocked to it. It was easier. We were cheaper. And basically killed off the whole segment of insurance offices, broker offices. Pretty much killed it off. And so when I got headhunted out of Churchill to start up Admiral, I went for it.
And how's insurance, like car insurance industry, changed from, when you started and where it currently stands right now?
Well, distribution has changed a lot. When I started, directs at the time, the other 6 who had started before us had probably less than 15% market share. Now, in a sense, there's only directs, except Admiral pioneered price comparison with the first price comparison site for car insurance called Confused.com. And the consumers shifted from face-to-face in a store to telephone, then from telephone to internet, because we also started something called elephant.co.uk. And that launched on August 2nd, 2000. And it was kind of an all-internet offering, So you really had to struggle to find a phone number in our offering, and you tried to do everything online. And in the days of dial-up connections, you two are too young, dial-up connections, that was hard, but okay. And obviously connections got better and more stable. But when we floated the company in September of 2004, so kind of 4 years later, Elephant was our biggest brand. That's how quickly the UK consumer shifted from telephone-based to internet-based. And then along came Confused and a few others, and boom, the consumer shifts again. And now the world is dominated by price comparison websites for finding your car insurer. So that's, some really big changes along the way. The calculation of rates is, I used to take our rating tables home and study them and look at making changes and that kind of thing. Forget it. You can't do that now. They are so complicated. They are using so much data, so much information, that it's impossible for a human to kind of really figure out a rate. You used to be, in fact, even before us, when we were working on the business, it's a funny story, we were working on the business plan for Admiral. We went into one of these insurance offices to try and just see how it was to get a quote. And we asked the guy to get a quote. He says, sure. And he picks up a plastified card. And he says, aged, okay, that's 1.1. And where do you live? Postcode, okay, that's times 0.7. And he literally was able to do our rate off a plastified card from one of the major insurers. And we even said to him, we said, could we have the card? He said, yeah, sure, I have another. Yeah, take it. He gave us that company's rating engine.
Oh, wow.
You could do it on a card. Now, it is so complex, And things in claims handling have improved tremendously. everything moves really fast now. You call the insurer, they get you to a garage, they take some pictures, the computer says, here's the parts and things you need, here's how much they cost, they give the okay, they start the repair process, they get you a car, boom, 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 it's all happening. Anybody injured, they start handling the injury claims, talk to the third parties, etc. It all moves so much faster now. It's a fabulous improvement for consumers.
So you mentioned earlier that, it's become so complex now to determine, someone's rate for a human mind. So how would AI, come to play in this? Because as we all know, AI is not a human mind.
Yeah. Well, AI, insurers have been using AI for a while now. And it is evolving the accuracy of rating. And it's helping because it can, churn through vast quantities of data very fast and help people get the exact rate. I remember years ago, when we were doing rating and we thought we were pretty sophisticated, we did a calculation at how much of our rating actually led to being able to accurately predict whether someone would have a claim or not, and it came out to about 32, 33%. 66% was random, at least from what we could tell. Now I'd imagine with a lot more data and things like AI, I don't know for sure, but I bet they're up to 45, maybe even 50% being what we can predict, and only 50% random. And that is very good. That's an advance because, within the industry used to be huge, big, broad brushes. Ages were all banded. 25 to 30 years old was an age band, meaning everything else being equal, a 25-year-old and a 30-year-old got exactly the same rate. Yeah, and it doesn't make sense, right? Because the lifestyles, the experience, blah blah blah, very different. Yep, and yet also when you had your 31st birthday, boom, it was a different rate. You know what I mean? It was a step change rate. What's that all about? And so we started with our techniques then to rate individual ages. Yeah, and now you just get so much more granularity that you can be more and more and more exact in your rating and get rid of as much randomness as you possibly can. But even still, I'm always perplexed because there are some, 30 million vehicles in the UK. And the claims frequency taking out windscreen is, let's say, 10%, big round number. So that means, and some people have more than one, but let's forget about them. Let's say everybody has one, 10%. So you have 3 million claims a year, right? Let's say it's 3 million people, yeah? That means 27 million people do not have a claim. And yet, if you try to find 1,000 people out of the 27 million people that don't have a claim this year, impossible. You'd think I got a pool of 27 and a pool of 3. I must be able to figure out which ones are the 3 and which ones are the 27. Impossible. If I even said to you 250 risks out of the pool of 27 million, impossible. Yep.
That's a lot of numbers.
There's a lot of randomness.
Yeah,
There's a lot of randomness in who has accidents. And yet all the data and information is there to try and figure out, to get rid of as much of that randomness as is possible. And AI will help.
And do you miss it?
Do I miss being involved?
Yeah, do you miss being involved like in the day-to-day?
When I hear that the team, the really bright, intelligent people that I worked with for many years, and obviously new ones, are off having a strategy day or something like that, and I wish I could be there. But when I'm spilling out of the gym to go have breakfast and it's 10:30 in the morning and they've been at work for 3 hours, not so much.
And you do still do mentoring and stuff with people there as well, so you're quite...
I mentor a lot of Admiral people. I mentor a lot of ex-Admiral people. I mentor other people as well, and I do a fair amount of training. I'm working on a series now for Admiral managers, which there's more than 1,000 or more than 1,200, to try and really get into the basics of what is and what makes great management, because it's hard, and you really need to be focused on what makes a great manager.
And what makes a great manager?
Glad you asked that
we were both
question.
going to ask that at the same time.
Perfect. So I have thought about it quite a bit, and I've distilled it to 3 things. 1, a great manager makes great decisions, and I can talk further about that. A great manager is great with people. And the third thing is that a great manager is creative and innovative and/or creates an environment of creativity and innovation. You do those three things really, really well, you can be a great manager. And the key behind making great decisions, there's a couple of keys. One, because this is the really important thing, you got to make good calls. You can have the best culture in the world right when you go out of business and you say, what good was that culture? You know, the culture has really got to contribute to that end result, those outcomes, whether you're a charity or, you know, the NHS or a business. It's got to contribute to the cultures. But making great decisions is really important. And the first thing in that is data and information. First thing is you must collect it. You must gather a lot of data and a lot of information. But the real key is interrogating that data and information. You've got to train yourself to ask the questions, to really understand, what is this information trying to tell me? I put up a chart very often that's bowel cancer survival rates by country over a 5-year period, something like 2013 to 2017. And if you look at it, Wales is down in kind of the bottom third, and Germany is top of the pops, and England's sort of in the middle, Scotland's down. No, maybe Scotland's in the middle, and England's back with Wales somewhere. And if you were the Welsh health minister and somebody gave you $100 million to spend on bowel cancer survival, your obvious leap, just looking at this chart, would be say, let's be like Germany. Hold the bus. Yeah. Let's interrogate that data a minute. First of all, you don't know from that simple chart, you don't know how thick the data is. If Wales had 2 more people survive over 5 years, would they be up with Germany? Is the data really thin? Maybe Germany has 3 deaths more and they're in the middle of the pack. You don't know that. You need to gather that information. Second, it's a 5-year average. What if you said, well, if I looked at each individual year, Germany was way up at the top 5 years ago, but ever since has been dropping. And actually, if you just had the most recent year, they'd be middle of the pack. And yet you want to be like Germany? You'd be going after the wrong guy because they're no longer tops. Again, that's about now maybe it's not that. Maybe Germany was tip top and still is, but it's interrogating the data that is really key. I have seen a lot of intelligent people make conclusions. There's the data, make my conclusion, off I go. Oh, wait. Ask a few questions first. It may not be the obvious conclusion that the data shows. Now, the second thing in making great decisions is really key. It's the team. The power of a team is invariably greater than the power of any single individual. Yeah? And you need to start talking to people about things. You need to ask them, what does this look like to you? What would you do here? How would you handle this? Even talk it over with the dog. Because when you talk to the dog, the light bulbs go off in your own head.
I speak with some founders who say that their dog is their number one co-founder.
There you go. There you go. It's absolutely true. But also talk to colleagues, talk to friends. The bigger and more, the decisions that will last a lot longer, talk to a lot more people. If you're signing up for a 25-year property lease with no breaks, talk to a lot of people because you ain't going to be able to go back from this decision. But if you're talking about, if you're doing something that you can put in today and undo tomorrow, maybe just talk to a few people. But you will almost always get a different way to look at it. Maybe they'll show you ramifications you hadn't thought of. It will really enhance your decision-making capability. The team. The power of the team is invariably greater than the power of any single individual. Third on the list is keep Earth in the window. And basically, I'm going to give a plug here for the Tom Hanks movie, Apollo 13. It's a true story movie. If you haven't seen it, it's a great movie. Tom Hanks.
I haven't seen it, but do know who Tom Hanks is.
Yes, and some other stars in it. It's a great movie. True story, Apollo 13 is heading to the moon. Nobody cares. It's about the 3rd or 4th moonshot. And they have an explosion en route to the moon, and then the whole world is glued to their TV sets to see if these 3 astronauts will get home safely. And at one point, they have to fire the rockets to get back into the Earth's orbit. And they've got no power, so they have no computer systems to tell them how to steer the ship. So he's going, well, how do I know where to go? So Tom has a great idea. He's got a little portal that he can look out of, and he says, well, I'll just keep Earth in the window. And they have this really hokey scene where the thing jogs one way and then the other way, and it's violent shaking, and then he steadies it, and he's got Earth in the window, and of course they get back into the orbit. But from a management perspective, what's your long term? What is your earth in the window? Where are you planning to go? And you should tie all your decisions back to that. Because if your earth in the window is we want to be the biggest, blah, 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 and you're coming up with a decision now to raise your prices and cut your volumes, you say, wait a minute, does that tie with my earth in the window? Now, maybe you want to change earth in the window, or you want to reconsider your decision because maybe that doesn't tie in with that long-term vision for your company. So always think, where does this get me in the long term? And lastly, I will often, the fourth thing in terms of making great decisions is make the decision. Because I've seen a lot of people, they collect information, they interrogate the data, they ask for more data, they get the data, they interrogate the data, they ask for more data, they talk to people about it, and I will finally take out the world's greatest decision-making tool. Hold on, I have one.
It's an exclusive that we're getting.
You can keep it.
I'm really hoping it's a puzzle piece.
There it is. It's a
Flip a
coin.
coin.
It's flip a coin. And I will sit in front of them and say, look, I've had enough. Heads it's this, tails it's that, call it in the air, that kind of thing. And they go, no, I'll make the decision. It really focuses the mind. Because eventually, to make great decisions, you've got to make the decision. And when you make the decision, you don't, just forget about it forever. You want to check on it, blah, blah, blah. But basically, on to the next. Move on.
Has the coin ever had to decide the decision?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Plenty of times.
Oh,
Just
well,
keep people in.
often, like I say, the minute I take it out, people panic.
Yeah.
I'll have it for you in an hour. I'll do it. I'll make the decision.
How much of decision making sometimes just go to gut instincts? Because you said you have to obviously analyze the data and asking for more and researching more. But sometimes, you just have this gut feeling. This is what we need to
But
do,
you see, your
regardless of
gut
what the
is
data
data.
says.
Your gut is information. What is your gut based on? It's not based on nothing. Your gut is based on anecdotal evidence that you've collected, you've synthesized in the computer upstairs here, and now you're coming to a decision, right? And you have a feel for it. And it's just as valid a piece of data as a chart that you get out of the newspaper. Yeah, it's a very important part of decision making. The problem is that data collection anecdotally is often incomplete. And therefore, you might not have all the data or the correct data, but it is data. Your gut isn't just you wake up in the morning and want to turn left. You will turn left because every time you turn left, you get to the office faster. So that's your gut instinct says turn left.
Mm-hmm.
And what would you say was your, earth, looking through the window?
The
What was your
earth in the window,
earth?
is it the same as a North Star?
Yeah.
Good. I haven't heard it called the Earth in the Window
Earth
yet.
in the
and I'm
window
thinking
is your
of
North
those
What was your
things.
North Star or Earth in the window?
Be the best. We weren't concerned about being the biggest. We knew that if we could be the best, be the absolute best at everything we do, we would succeed.
Quality over quantity.
Quality and quantity will, don't worry about the quantity. It'll happen, right? So be the best. That was always our mantra. And I used to tell people, I'd say second best, it's not the best. We want to be the best.
And when it came to building a team, I'm assuming you started to just slowly hire one by one, and now Admiral has 10,000 people working for it.
Mm-hmm.
How was that in terms of growing pains? I mean, surely it's a bit difficult to manage, going from 10 people to 10,000.
Yeah.
So where did that?
It's hard. I've learned over time the best way to do it is to bring talented people in at positions reasonable to their talent level. Get to know them, they get to know you, and then promote from within. You get the devil you know. Mm-hmm. When you go outside for hiring senior people, it is very often a crapshoot. It's 50-50. I don't care all the techniques, all the tests you give them, all the number of people you interview, blah, blah, blah. It is very difficult to always get it right going outside for hiring senior people. We've had some successes, yeah, and we've had some big failures that way. But more often than not, the real successes have come from people coming in internally, learning about them, they cream rises to the top, and they keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And that's what happened with the CEO as well. That was an internal, the one that took over the CEO when you left.
For me, it was one of the co-founders.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
It was a friend from INSEAD who went to work for McKinsey out of INSEAD and kind of lost his good feeling for McKinsey. And I called him almost as a lark when I was hired to set this up. And I said, would you be interested? And he shocked me. He said, yeah. I said, really? Great. And so I'd hired already a marketing research lady. We'd hired, very fortunate to get her as well. The two of us took him to dinner to try and convince him to join. And I would talk, and she would talk, and he would talk, and he would talk, and she would talk, and I would talk, and then and I felt like I was moving further and further away from the table. They're married and have 3 kids. They're coming up to their 30th wedding anniversary.
Okay.
So basically, you were a matchmaker.
Yeah, matchmaker
A full-service firm, right? A full-service firm.
Not just car insurance, guys.
That's right. That's right. And then, but the lady who took over from him was a recruit, another INSEAD grad, fabulous lady, incredible lady, and she's now the CEO. And she started our Italian operation and grew that from nothing to be a great business, and then came over to the UK, learned more about the UK business, and has now moved into the position to be the CEO. And kind of her number 2 is another lady who started our Spanish business. And she too came to the UK, and now she runs the entire UK insurance business. So yeah, by hiring from within, we know what we're getting.
And how has it been like? And what's the difference, would you say, like a day-to-day difference between managing 5 to 10 people against managing 5,000 to 10,000 people?
It's harder, and your job changes. Very early on, we did an away day as a management team, and one of the little exercises was we were all giving each other names of animals to represent us, right? So what animal did they give me? They gave me a Jack Russell Terrier because I nipped at everybody's heels all the time, right? And it was a small team, and I walked around a lot, and I was, the grease in the wheels and on top of everything. And as we grew, I knew I had to move back and back and back, because otherwise, as my father showed, you suffocate the business and it can't go anywhere. So I had always in my mind, never be the cork in the bottle. Nobody should say, oh, that's been sitting on his desk for 2 weeks. No way. If I can't do it quickly, then I've got to delegate and let somebody else pick it up, because these things shouldn't wait. We need to move fast. We're a speedboat in a world of super tankers. And the minute we start acting like a super tanker, we sink because we're only a speedboat. Yeah, it doesn't work. So you have to kind of keep pulling back. And even though I had to stop doing things I really liked doing, I had to. And I had to let other people do them, because otherwise the firm was always going to remain small. So yeah, you have to keep moving back and make sure other managers are doing that. And some managers can't. Some managers are great getting you to launch and then maybe launching and running a small team, but they can't run the bigger team. Sorry, you've got to change. You can't just carry them, because otherwise they will not be able to grow. You need people who can grow with that firm.
It's like the saying, don't work too much in your business than you would on it. So you have to also work on it than you would in it.
Yeah.
And so what animal would you be now if you're not a Jack Russell Terrier? Did you change?
I don't. Yeah, I've changed along the way.
Did they rename you as an animal
I have
after
to ask
that?
them.
Okay.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a Jack Russell Terrier
No.
anymore. I'm learned to lay back. People will come to me. You learn too, and you should learn that people come to you with problems, and hey, I'm not going to solve that problem. That's your problem. Yes, it's my problem because I manage you, but what are you going to do? Hey, sort it. That's what you're hired for. And that's why you get paid the big bucks kind of thing. You work on that problem and sort it. If I can come up with an idea, certainly I'll help. But I'm not going to take responsibility for sorting all the problems. That's just not right. And so you learn as a leader to keep stepping back and letting other people grow into these roles. And that's really important, because very often they will do certain things far better than you would. And so you're getting a much better core team than you yourself could provide.
I think in one of our last podcasts, someone said they knew they made a good hire when problems stopped happening and they were starting to be solved, and they didn't have to do anything with it. So people just solve the problems
That'd
for
be
you.
great.
So you
Yes,
get it sorted.
absolutely.
And that's when the team is kind of running fluidly by itself. When fewer and fewer of your staff come to you with problems, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I mean, if you can reduce problems, everybody wins. Everybody's trying to get the business, and businesses are trying to get into a steady state. That's what we kind of go for. We don't want the problems, the fires, the man overboard sort of thing. You're trying to get that business to be steady, but you still need to look at steady. And one thing that I always encourage people to do is look at numbers that don't move much. Because normally what managers do is they look at the numbers that move. Oh, our conversion rate went from 13 to 23 to 33 to 19. It's all over the place. What's going on? Let's look at that one. And they don't look at numbers that are always 7. Yeah? And sometimes you have to look at it and go, is that good or bad? Should it be 7 or 27 or 07, you know? So you do try to get things steady, but then you need to look at steady and say, okay, how could we do things a lot better? And this comes into the innovation and creativity point. One of the really good ways to push that innovation and creativity is give people the intellectual challenge of something that looks pretty impossible. So one time I'm talking to the Admiral manager shortly after I'd stepped down. I said, what's your staff attrition rate? And they said something, I don't know, they said something like 22, which was pretty good in our industry. A lot of people, you know, phone-based work, young people and so forth, pretty good. And I said, okay. And I said, well, you know, what if I said there will be no bonuses or share allocations unless that number becomes 5? And of course, their first thing out of their mouth is impossible, right? I knew I'd hit the spot. Impossible? Great. Then all the bonuses and share allocations, they're impossible, right? Oh, okay. So you got to, if you're going to go from 22 to 5, you need to take the place apart brick by brick and reassemble it in a better way. You want to go from 22 to 21? You can shave a little bit here. You can do a few things a little bit differently, and there's nothing wrong with incremental, gains. Yeah, but you want people to start thinking about the big change, and to move staff attrition from 22 to 5, you start with what's the image of the company in the area we're recruiting, and how do we put the job adverts out, and how do we review a CV, and who does that? And all the way through to how people are being managed today, and how we're paying them, and on and on and on. There's 100 things in the chain that you need to look at. But that's what you need to do if you're going to go from 22 to 5. Now, you might not get to 5, but what if you got to 12? If I challenge you to go from 22 to 21, you might get there. You're unlikely to get to 12. Certainly won't get to 5. But if I challenge you to get to 5, you might get well below 21 in the attempt to get to 5. And so we need to challenge big time to force people to be creative, because that's where creativity really comes in. How can we do things radically differently to change what is happening now for the better?
And what was the biggest challenge to your creativity that you faced while you were CEO of Admiral?
Probably people's resistance to creativity. Yeah. And you throw out a wacky idea and people just kind of roll their eyes. And what you want is, okay, roll your eyes, but start thinking about the idea. Because from this completely wacky idea comes something in the middle that could be a very good idea. And so you need people to accept the wacky, the crazy, to come up with the wacky and crazy. What if we gave our product for free? Let's give it for free.
Yeah. A bunch of car insurance for
Let's
free.
give it for free. Wait.
A lot of people would love that.
Yeah, a lot of people would love that. Okay, well, that would, is there a way to do that?
Discounts.
I don't know. But you start from there and you get back to something as how could we do it cheaper, better, easier, faster, however.
And going back into just your book, Be a Better Boss, would you say that's one of the reasons that kind of drove you to write this book, to tell this story of how you can become a better manager, is your experience and what you've seen in management? And you've definitely seen a lot of bad management. So is that what drove you into writing this book?
Well, yes. The first iteration of the book was simply for Admiral managers, and it was very Admiral-centric and a lot more on the history to try and perpetuate good management at Admiral. And then other people would read it and said, oh, really, it's really interesting, but it should be a little bit less Admiral-centric. So I rewrote it, added quite a few bits, and took a lot of the Admiral-centric stuff out. And it's written because we have an acute shortage of great leaders and managers in the world today. And I've seen this with my own kids. I have a daughter, bright as a button, keen as mustard. She went to work in an industry she really wanted to be in. And the ultimate boss, who she had to work closely with, he was a yeller. He had to prove he was the smartest guy in every room. He would email and text on weekends and evenings and expect replies. And she went from bright and bubbly and energetic to depressed, anxious, nervous, unhappy. Her boyfriend said it was like watching a dimmer switch be slowly turned down. Yeah. She lasted 9 months and took a 30% pay cut to go somewhere where the management was better. Yeah. He doesn't have the right. Look, he might be having this kind of an effect on 20 people in that organization. They all have, husbands, wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever it might be, parents, other friends, maybe kids. And, he could be ruining the lives of a small village. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like the saying, a lot of people don't quit their jobs, they quit their managers. Yeah. And right. I think that's probably what your daughter, definitely what your daughter experienced.
I introduced myself to all the new starters into Admiral for 25 years, some 25,000 people. And I would talk to them about Admiral and what they were going to get, and I would ask them a few questions. And one of the things I would ask them and listen to all their answers, why did you leave where you were to join us today? And so many of them would say, because I was badly managed, because they treated me badly, because they didn't respect me, because they didn't care about me. There were just so many instances of good people leaving brand name firms to come to Admiral because they were just not treated properly. It's not rocket science, guys. And yet so many managers move up to that level and they just cannot control themselves. They don't understand. And when I'm doing a management lecture, I'll ask people, I say, who here has targets? They all raise their hand. And I say, who here can meet their targets by themselves? And they look at me like I've fallen out of a tree. Of course we can't meet the targets ourselves. Yeah, and I say, well, that's the best management lesson you could get. If you can't hit those targets yourself, you have got to be really concerned for the people who are going to hit those targets for you. And it's an inverted pyramid. The most important people in the company is the customer. They pay all the bills. They make the cash register ring. Customer, 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 customer. They're most important. Followed by anybody who has a touch on a customer. Maybe it's on the phone. Maybe it's in person. Maybe it's writing code. Whoever has a touch on a customer. Followed by support departments. Followed by managers. Followed by senior managers. Followed by a CEO. Followed by a board of directors. Yeah? It's an upside down pyramid. The board of the directors there to support the CEO, to support the senior manager, to support the manager, support the support department, support the people who support the most important people in the company, and that's the customer. I am here for them. I am here for you, not the other way around. That's the key to really great management, is remembering that final line, that customer. That's what it's all about. And I'm not going to talk to any customers today, so I better do whatever I can to support the people who will.
Mm-hmm. I grew up in serving positions. I would be a waitress like northern Wisconsin for about 6 years. Customer, customer, customer. It's one thing that you always learn working in any service department at all or hospitality. And also, a bad hire can cost your business a lot more than a paycheck. I mean, that's something I've also heard is if you hire a bad manager, you're going to lose out on like 5 different people.
Big time.
I guess, how do you hire a good hire? I mean, what do you look for? Did you do any of the initial interviews?
Yeah, a lot. I do. I have my own interviewing pattern. Yeah. I first of all like to put people in situations. Well, actually, the first thing I do is I ask people to go through their CV. I say, this is all I know about you. Tell me about yourself. Put some meat on the bones. I have had people go for 35 minutes without inhaling. Yeah, they just go. And I've had people do their whole life in 70 seconds. And between, and that can't be right either. And you know what people fail to do when they go for an interview so much? They fail to practice. And I tell my kids, I said, practice, practice, practice. If I said, you're going to go make a presentation to the board of directors of your company, would you practice? They go, of course I would. Well, you're going for a job interview. What could be more important than changing your life with a new job? Just practice going through your CV and target it to what the job is. I had one guy once who went on and started telling me stuff, and then he says, I really shouldn't be telling you this, but, and I'm sitting there going, you're right, you really shouldn't be telling me this. I don't care. It's not a psychiatrist's couch. It's a job interview.
I'm not your therapist. Yeah. I'm your future boss.
That's right. Tell me something that applies to the job you're trying to get. And then I'll ask situational questions. I don't, you can ask, give me your best 2 qualities and your best 2 worst, and that's fine. But anybody can make up things along the way and come up with good answers. I want you to put you in a situation where there's no right and there's no wrong. And you got to figure out what to do. And I want to see how you come to that conclusion. And that's really important. So I have a few set pieces, set questions that I would ask people that would put them in difficult positions, real time. I mean, these are things that happen to us. They aren't just made up out of the air, and see what they do. But lately I've come up with a great new interview question. Oh. It's a new favorite. In the middle of the interview, you just simply say, to the nearest whole number, what is 17% of 165? Yeah, and people look at you, deer in the headlights, like, oh my God, what? And they could even be people who are actuaries or whatever, and they struggle to switch gears, and very simply, and I didn't ask to the nearest decimal point, to the nearest whole number, give me an estimate, right? And you can't believe some of the answers I've had on this, way out of bounds, or people who take a long time and then give me an answer that's out of bounds. And it's just a very simple mental gymnastics, but also, when you're really under pressure, how do you think? Because this is putting you under because people are expecting you to go, bam, 28.05. I know the answer.
Is that the answer? I was just going to ask him what his answer was. I'm assuming it's not
I was thinking 28. Yeah, that's exactly what my answer was going to be.
Yeah, you were on it. So anyway, but interviewing is, the other thing is, do lots of interviews because you start to iterate the answers. But one time I interviewed a lady. Sadly, I'm still working. This is 9 years ago, and I'm still trying to get her to work for Admiral. But she did the interview. She just had a smile on her face the whole way. And I walked away thinking, wow, she was great. What a great interview. And I'd interviewed about 7 people, asking them all very similar questions all day long, right, that day. And I went back and I looked at all the answers. And her answers were no better or no worse than anybody else's. But I came away thinking, wow, she was brilliant, just because she put a smile on her face. So again, I told my kids, when you go for a job interview, put a smile on your face. And don't take that smile off until you walk out the door of the company, because that goes a long way to how people will think about you, that smile.
Perception. And she didn't get a job. She didn't get the job.
She didn't take the job.
You're still trying to hire her.
I know. Did she just not? Yeah. Did she get another one?
She took another job.
Okay. Fair enough.
I'm still talking to her. We talk regularly. 7 and 9 years later.
And as you were writing the book, did you notice different things? Did you learn different things? You're writing, better tips or guides for becoming like a better manager.
Yeah, I mean, writing the book really kindled the memories because we've done so much over 30 years in terms of, new ways of management and just trying things and, things like the Ministry of Fun and then formulating the culture into 4 pillars of our culture: communication, equality, reward, and fun, things like this. And as you were writing, the memories of things we did popped up, and that's why there's a lot of little stories in the book that kind of make it a bit more interesting to have a little story to exemplify the point.
I would be curious as to what your advice would be for someone who wants to start a business and they're not really a people person. Because I find it that some people are very introverted when they want to start a business, but they don't know how to lead a team. They don't know how to build a staff. They don't know how to talk to people. What would your advice be to someone? Like, can you learn good leadership? Or is that something that's kind of...
I've seen introverted people be good managers because, the most important thing is you be honest. If you struggle with people, tell the people you hire, by the way, if you're expecting a big pat on the back and a joke every morning, it's not going to come from me because I can't do that. I'm not that type of person. Here's who I am, and here's what I stand for. Very important that people are starting businesses. Any senior manager really steps back and thinks, what do I stand for? What are the lines? What are my values? What are the lines that can't be crossed? Let me give you an example. When I did a stint managing our U.S. operation shortly after I semi-retired. We had a guy, senior guy, good guy, bright guy, important job, and he had a bit of a caustic sense of humor. Not everybody loved him. And this one time, he got double booked to do a training class as well as the weekly meeting for that department. And right before it all started, he went up to the meeting room where all the managers were gathering, and he yelled at the person he thought had double booked him and really, tore him apart, stormed out. Well, she made a complaint, and it came to me. And we looked at it all, and we got, what exactly happened, fine. And in the end, we felt there was only one choice. No matter how senior he was, no matter how good a job he was hardworking, bright guy, he had to go. Because in any company I'm leading, every single individual must treat every other individual, be they colleagues, suppliers, customers, owners, whoever, with dignity and respect at all times. Full stop. No excuses, no ifs, ands, or buts, no exceptions. Can't cross that line. He crossed that line. He did not treat that lady. You can disagree with people. You don't have to like everybody you work with, but you must treat everybody with dignity and respect at all times. That's one of my principles and rules. Yeah? What are yours? If you're running a business, if you're new to senior management, start by thinking, what are my principles? What are my values? And talk to your people about them. Talk to them and tell them what they are. Because introverted or extroverted, you need to communicate. And it doesn't have to be a lot. And you can tell people, I am not going to be here every day standing up in front of you. But I am happy to answer any questions you might have. I'm happy to explain things, whatever it might be, that fits your personality. Because you cannot be the person you aren't and expect people to trust you, because they can see through that. And they will never know, is he being himself today or is he being somebody else today? I never know. I used to put a mood meter up in my office. I had a picture, a lovely picture of a golf scene. And I took a little blue tack
golf,
as the ball.
you?
I do like my golf. And I put it, if it's up by the pin, the blue tack's up by the pin, I'm really good. And if it's on the green, that's okay. And if it's in the sand trap, be careful. And if you ever come in and see the little ball in the water,
don't even knock on the door.
don't walk or turn away. It's not going to happen, right? Now, it's not like I jumped up every 15 minutes and moved the ball around, but it was to exemplify I'm human too. I have good days and bad days. I have ups and downs, just like you, just like everybody. And that happens. So be yourself. That is really important. Ask yourself, are you a good person? And if you're a good person, what's wrong with being yourself?
And would you say the success that you've garnered throughout the years have changed you in any way? Like, how do you stay grounded, regardless of how much you've made, the businesses you've created? How do you stay on earth and stay grounded and remember, the kid who was working, for your father and his hot dogs?
The wife and family help, because it's one of the success features. Because I recognize, our society promotes its heroes and looks really badly upon the failures. The CEO gets far too much credit for things good and far too much blame for things bad. Yeah, I'm one piece of the puzzle. I'm one cog in the machine. I'm an influential cog, but it took thousands of people doing brilliant things at Admiral to create the fantastic business it is today. And I am thankful for each and every one of those people who helped Admiral succeed. And I am so proud to be part of that team, that community, that it's brilliant. And I'm a part of the community. I am not the community. And you have to remember that at all times. Businesses, almost no business is succeeding because of one person. It's impossible.
Fair enough. Unless you're a micro business, I guess, for now. If it's just one person.
But even then, they're probably micro,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
And they have to grow, and therefore they add a person, and most really good businesses and really big businesses are built on the back of many, many, many people.
When did you realize, oh, snap, this is successful? Like we're becoming huge. Was it like your 50th employee? Was it your 70th? Or was it like a profit you guys hit?
It was almost never. We would sometimes we'd hit a milestone and we'd turn around and pat ourselves on the back. And when we turned around to pat ourselves on the back, we'd say, "Uh-oh, is that a truck right behind us? We better move." You just again, for good management, paranoia is actually a real good quality. You've just ought always to be worried about the future. It's really, really important that you got to do that pat on the back. You got to sit back and go, yeah, we've accomplished some good things, but you've just got to pick yourself up and say, how can we do better? Because somebody's chasing us. And they're going to catch up with us and go right past us if we're not careful. So, the float was a really big thing. We were in a time when the two companies before us had gone under their price range. So before you float, you come out with a price range, maybe whatever, £2 to £3, and you're going to float the shares somewhere in that range. And the two before us had to go below their range to get their shares off the block. we came out with, I think our range was 235 to 285, and we floated at 275, and we were 11 times oversubscribed. So we really did well and showed people that, hey, we were a good business. And that was a real confirmation moment, to be able to get the float off on such good terms. And every member of staff owned part of it. And 1,400 members of staff split up 56 million pounds that day. Oof. That was a good day. And the next day, the car park, fabulous change. Overnight.
Okay.
What did you do with your first million then? Did you go and get yourself a brand new car as well? Were you part of
No,
the
no,
change
no.
in
Do
the
they
car
offer free
park?
car insurance if you work?
No, discount. No free.
Okay.
Not free. Discount.
They got really nice cars and
Yeah.
discounted car insurance.
That's
so
right.
that works out.
So that's it.
How'd you spend that?
We went for that.
56
We
million
floated in
shares.
September, and that December we took a really nice family holiday, a safari holiday to South Africa. That was really a nice plus.
Better than card, in my opinion.
Yeah, no cars, no interest to me.
What do you do on
No
your
cars are interest to you.
What do you do on your free time then? How do you relax?
You're a
you
Cubs fan, aren't you?
I'm a Cubs fan, but that's not how I relax.
know? Yeah, I don't think sports is
2016,
relaxing.
2016 was like the best year of my life. 108-year drought. No other team had gone that many years without winning its championship. 108 years. And we knocked it on its head in 2016. It was glorious. There were 5 million people at the parade afterwards. And if you look up biggest parades ever, that one will come up.
Actually, I do remember that.
It was unbelievable.
I'm a Brewers fan, I must say.
For your
but-
sins.
Yeah. That, and I've also gone between Brewers and Twins, and I haven't really branched out to the Cubs yet, but...
Yes, well, the Cubs are suffering at the moment, but we're coming. We're coming.
What's your NFL team?
Oh, I'm not
Packers.
that big, but the Bears. Yes, Packers. Please.
He's like, Packers?
Oh, not the Bears.
Yeah, the Bears.
Fair enough.
But our great year there was what, 1984?
Yeah.
And how often do you go back to the States?
Yeah, I go back a couple times a year. I still have friends and family there and Cubs. Yeah.
Have you ever thought about moving back, or are you like, nope?
No.
Wales is for me.
Wales is us. We've been adopted. Wonderful people in Wales. It rains a lot. Very green for a reason. But other than that, it's a wonderful place to raise a family and live a life.
How do you stay, what's the way to put it? You're building a really big business and a really successful business. How do you manage your day-to-day life outside of the business? Because I find a lot of entrepreneurs tend to get consumed by the business. But
Working
you've always-
72 hours a week.
Yeah. And you seem to have had
12 hours
a really
day.
good balance when it comes to work and life. So how do you do that?
Very good point. When we were just 5 of us writing the business plan, I got people around a table no bigger than this, our meeting table at the time. And I said to them, and this is, by the way, for those of you listening, this is like a table the size of a 50p coin.
He's
A
not
little more flipping
exaggerating.
for the decision.
For audio listeners, he's not exaggerating.
And so I said to them, look, I want to have a successful business career, and I want to have a successful family life. At the time, I had 2 young children. I ended up with 4. And I said the 2 are not mutually exclusive. I will work hard, and sometimes I will stay late, but by and large, my intention is to have breakfast with my family in the morning and dinner with my family in the evening. And by and large, I lived up to that. And that was very important to me. And what I learned, though, in trying to achieve that, first of all, if that's a rule for me, that's got to be a rule for everybody. So even before there was the term work-life balance, we had work-life balance in Admiral. It had to be. I can't do rules for one that are not rules for everybody. That's a killer for management. Hypocrisy. Doesn't work. But I realized that when you do that, you have to give more people more autonomy and delegate. And they grow and flourish, and they become better at things than you are. And that's really important to the success of the overall organization. So actually, the fact that you take more time off, it helps the organization. It doesn't hurt the organization. And I always encourage my managers, take your holiday time. Don't, save it up and take December off. That's no good. Take a week here, work there. Business is a long game. We want people to stay 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. That experience you gain is invaluable to us. And the cost of going back and recruiting and training and, then growing new talent, that's very expensive. And if we're going to have that long game, I can't burn you out in your first year. That can't be our model. We've got to encourage you to enjoy your workplace, to have fun, to take your holidays, to break free, come back refreshed. One of my key sayings was always take lunch. And it's not about getting food. I mean, could be, but it's about getting out of the office, take a newspaper, a magazine, a friend, whatever, but get out, clear your head. You'll come back. Not only will the afternoon be better for you, the afternoon in 10 years' time will be better for you.
We need a holiday.
Yeah.
You're convincing us to go.
I need a serious holiday.
It's time to go.
But that is very true. I mean, burnout is it's one of the biggest barriers, I think, to
Absolutely.
success.
There was an article in the paper yesterday that talked about people who are quietly quitting. They quit
hearing that
internally.
one.
They don't
And
even
part of
realize
it
it.
is burnout, and part of it is toxic management. These things are rife in our organizations, not just businesses, but all over. And that's partly why I've written the book. Let's create a world of great leaders and managers. We'll all be better off.
And what would be your advice to just, a young entrepreneur, someone maybe straight out of college, maybe someone who's thinking about dropping out to start their own business? What would you be, what would you say is like your top 2, top 3, top 1 advice?
Talk to people, read, think. It's not just about jumping into action. Yes, you do need to take action. You're gonna be an entrepreneur. You got to do something, right? But talk to people you don't even know. When you sit on a plane, you sit on a bus, learn from them. What's your job like? Oh, I have a horrible manager. Why is he a horrible manager? Okay, I just learned a lot about horrible management. Oh, I had a great manager. Why? Why is your manager great? What's your business like? What's your target market? And how do you fend off the competition? And blah, blah, blah. Learn from every experience. Read a lot of books. Yeah. Try and shave that learning curve as quickly as you can. A successful business is a combination of good ideas and good implementation. And it's both. You can have the greatest idea in the world. If it's badly implemented, it goes nowhere. You can take horrible ideas with good implementation, but they're horrible ideas. So you need good ideas and then good implementation. Be honest with yourself. What am I good at? And where do I need help? And go out and get the help. Yeah, don't sit there and think, I'm the boss. I'll do everything. I'll know everything. Hold the boss. If you're no good at accounting, get somebody who is. Even if they're way better than you at accounting, that's what you want. Yeah? So fill the voids. Understand yourself, your strengths and your weaknesses, and fill those voids. But the main thing is, before you start, just talk to a lot of people, read a lot of books, literature, podcasts, listen to podcasts. Yeah,
This
that's the key.
podcast.
Yeah,
You heard
Founder
him. He said it.
Favorites.
He said it.
Read a lot of books like Be a Better Boss,
Yeah,
listen
we'll
to
plug that.
podcasts
You plug
like
that. What is your favorite book other than this one? What has there been any one that shaped you?
There's some great management books out there. One I love is called The Pet Book, Parent Effectiveness Training by Thomas Gordon. It's a bit of an old book, and it's about raising kids. I give it to managers to read because it's great for managing people.
Do they
Yeah?
read the books you give them, or do you make them?
Yeah, they do. No, they do. They read them. There's a great old book called Maverick by a guy named Ricardo Semler. It's an old book now, pre-internet and all, but a fabulous book about a guy who took a family business that was dying on the vine in Brazil, turned every management thought on its ear, and created a great business out of it. It's a really good book. There's a really good book on Southwest Airlines, which is a fabulous story of success in an industry where everybody failed for decades, and they made money when everybody didn't. And it was a guy who ran it named Thomas Kelleher, who's passed away since. And the book is called Nuts, because they used to hand out nuts on the plane. I don't think they can do that anymore.
Yeah, they don't, do
No,
they?
everybody's
Pretzels.
allergic.
Everybody's
Yeah,
allergic.
but they do
Everybody take out their needles and stuff.
they do, but do they still do pretzels and stuff? 'Cause I feel
Yeah.
like every time I'm on a plane, I don't get
Southwest,
pretzels
I think,
anymore.
does.
Okay.
Yeah. But he would be down, helping the baggage claim guys, take the baggage off to move it faster and so forth. And he really ran a fabulous business against all odds to make a successful business out of it, because the other airlines worked hard to keep him out. And he was the precursor to all the discount airlines we've seen since. Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last. Love that book. Great, management guru, and that's a really wonderful book to read. There's many. There's
start
many
writing these
great
down.
books.
Add to my
I'm sure I
Kindle
could come up with
library.
10 more.
Send us an email. And if you could change anything from your past in business, or even, when you were still in school studying journalism, what would you change, or what would you tell yourself what would you do differently if you could?
Yeah,
Or
well, there
if
was
any?
one incident where things turned out in the end. Okay, so I'm not really complaining. But when I was going into my final year of university, and I was doing a double major with journalism, which I was really keen on, and radio, TV, and film, which I really liked, and I was pretty good at. And just before classes started, I get a call from the head of the art, radio, TV, and film department, and said they're starting up a TV directing class, and it's going to be very small, really elite, and he'd like me in it. And kind of almost without thinking, I said, well, I'm doing a journalism thesis, and that's going to take up a lot of time. I don't have time for it. Sorry. Hang up the phone. Holy cow, what a huge mistake. I mean, first of all, the journalism thesis turned out to be the biggest waste of time of my life. It went nowhere. It was not
Have to
good.
tell us.
It took a lot of time. TV and film was just booming in America because it was the beginning of cable. And all of a sudden you went from kind of three networks to hundreds of stations, all looking for directors and producers and talent and all these things. And I could have slotted right in with this, this elite class would have promoted me into really the upper echelon of college graduates in this area and so forth. And, who knows what would have happened. But the real mistake was I made the decision without even asking anybody. I didn't even talk it over with the dog, right? I just, boom, I'm too busy, right? And now if I just talked to one person, a friend, my parents, anybody about it, they might have said, well, hold the bus. Maybe you could do both. Or is the journalism thesis really important? Or whatever it might have been. And that was the mistake. The mistake was not stepping back and talking it over with others. And so as a manager, you learn that you say, hey, wait, don't jump to the conclusions, the first thing that hits your mind and say, I'm in charge here. I'm going to make all the decisions. Boom, there's the decision. Whoa, step back. Yeah, talk to somebody, at least one person. Could have changed my life. Now, like I say, I'm not complaining loudly, right? Things turned out really well, but that was a big mistake in its time.
Would you still consider, being a journalist today, or working in TV?
Well, hey, I got a book, come on.
I mean, but working at a news desk,
No.
no,
Sorry.
no news anchoring.
But it was great training.
What about TV?
It was fabulous training, though, the journalism training, because we learned in those days, you turned in your story, but things might change that night, and they'd given you, 15 inches to write, and in the end they only had 12. Well, it's not like they go through it looking for a sentence to cut here and a paragraph to cut here. They just cut bottom up. That's a great business learning. Put what's important at the top, because you never know whether the bottom is ever going to get read. It might never even make the page, yeah? So you write what's important at the top. That's great for business. Who reads a 17-page paper? You might get your audience through the first page. You better tell them what they're supposed to hear in that first page. And that came automatic to me with my journalism training. And it's really good for marketing as well. When you're writing a radio ad or TV ad or any kind of ad, you better tell people straight ahead, because, and especially in these days, getting people's attention for more than 2 seconds, very, very challenging. So you better work those 2 seconds really hard rather than lead them along hoping they'll stay with you until the denouement at the end of the ad.
I might be biased because I spend a lot of my journalist time interviewing founders, and it's really cool, but I think journalism is also very entrepreneurial. Like, you're out there, you're meeting people, you're getting the story, you're building this, connections, this network, and all that fun stuff. So I meet a lot of founders that either studied journalism or they were journalists and then they ended up starting a business.
That's
so,
interesting.
Yeah,
maybe there is.
It's a curiosity, I think, maybe.
Well, you're also writing from your own mind. And that's entrepreneurial, isn't it? Well, I guess now you write from ChatGPT.
No, we don't.
No. But, you write from your own mind. And you're right. That is very entrepreneurial. Everything is very creative. Even if you're writing a news story and just saying, Fred Smith, blah, 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 it is still entrepreneurial. What comes first? What's important? How do you put all this information into one clean sentence? It's an art.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming, Henry.
My great pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
It was good fun.
I've been looking forward to this all month, to be fair.
Yeah, it's great having you.
You want to do some TikToks after this?
Yes, by the way, he's starting a TikTok. Which camera am I looking at? He's starting a TikTok. So
a new TikToker.
So yeah, we'll definitely put Am
I a talker or a TikToker? I don't know. What's the terminology?
It should be
here?
a TikToker.
A TikToker.
We'll be putting his TikTok account and link in description. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you.